Hi there, my name is Alicia. I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner and I own my own private practice, and I teach other psych NPs how to build their own practices to find freedom and balance in their lives. Today we are talking about if you should take psych NP students in your practice. Let's start by talking about some of the benefits that there are to taking psych NP students in your practice. The obvious benefit is going to be that you are able to shape the new generation of psych NPs, that it is your practice, so you can choose to spend more teaching time, slow your day down, be able to really give them a good experience for their preceptorship. As all of us probably have had a preceptor that was incredibly helpful and really shaped how we practice now, and some of us have also had preceptors where we were just in like a fast-paced environment, what's going on, couldn't learn a whole lot. We've really, probably most of us have experienced it all throughout our preceptorships. So it is really exciting to be able to build the preceptorship that you would have wanted to have when you were in school. It also can be incredibly helpful if you, say, have a psych NP student for multiple semesters and they really get to learn your process and your practice. And sometimes later on, they can even become a great help to you by taking some of the workload off of your plate. Not that that is the goal, that you are offloading or dumping work on them, but that eventually, maybe as they learn, they could help you with your workload organically, right? Another thing that can be really helpful, if this is your perspective, and I want to encourage you to do whatever you want to do in this arena, but if you do charge, it can be helpful to your practice to have that extra income, especially if you are taking less patients on days, so that you can take students and really teach them and provide them with a good experience. You can kind of balance out some of that maybe loss of income of having more teaching time for them. If that is your choice, some people choose to charge and some people don't, and I think either one is fine. And lastly, another thing that is really beneficial to having NP students is that they bring a really fresh perspective. It's really nice to have students around because they are learning, ideally they're learning whatever is most new, what our best practices. Sometimes they have worked in a variety of settings, come from a variety of backgrounds. So it can be really helpful to have students that have fresh perspectives. And I know that I have precepted lots of students, and I find that they teach me a lot, honestly. Let's zoom in on that point of an enhanced learning experience and learning from each other. So when you have a psych NP student, I think it's also pushes you to learn more about the questions that they're asking. They may be asking questions of things you didn't think about. It's also important, it pushes you to also stay up to date on newer drugs and newer treatments because students may be asking about them. Students overall create a dynamic learning environment for you and also for each other. I tend to have 2 or 3 students at a time, and they kind of bounce off of each other and learn from each other. If one is interviewing the patient, the other one is writing the note, and so they're kind of learning together, or really any iteration of that. And so you really can create this dynamic learning environment, which is valuable for you because you as a preceptor are learning and watching how to teach better, and obviously learning from your students through what they're asking you. And then they are all learning from each other and you, of course. So overall, I think it pushes you to be a better clinician. Now let's talk about some potential challenges that adding NP students to your practice can bring. So the obvious one is that they need supervision and they require a good amount of time commitment. So when a student comes to your practice, they're going to say they need a certain number of hours, and so you have to meet those hours for them. So if they need a day or 2 days, you have to make sure that you have enough patients that consent to having NP students to be able to provide those hours. In your private practice, it's probably not going to be until you have like a fuller caseload. You probably don't want to take Psych NP students in your practice until you've been in practice for at least maybe 6 months to a year, so that you have enough patients. And so the challenge is essentially is like supervising them, having enough patients that they can see, and then obviously you need to provide that time commitment to them. Usually their rotations are 3-4 months, and so you need to provide that amount of time, and so that can be challenging. And again, you also have to balance your time. You may have to take a few less patients on that day in order to debrief all of the patients with them. Personally, I don't like adding too many patients on days with students. I like them to have a full day, but too full of a day doesn't allow for enough teaching or debriefing. Another challenge is balancing teaching and providing good patient care. You don't want to have the student interview a patient when they're not ready, so you have to balance kind of how much they're watching you, how much they're interviewing patients, what patients would be receptive to that, what patients' treatment would be conducive to having a student as a part of their treatment, what patients are going to feel uncomfortable or feel like they can't say certain things when there's extra people in the room. So you have to balance that as well, which can be challenging at times. To combat some of those challenges, you're going to want to have a structured approach. You're going to want to, before you take on students, I would encourage you not just to wing it. I would encourage you to essentially establish how you want to take students, how many patients you want on those days, what days you want to take students. Tell the students what days those are going to be. For example, if you only ever have students on Tuesdays, you tell the students, like, I only take students on Tuesdays before they start their rotation, so that you don't run into the issue of maybe Tuesdays are their work day. So I encourage you to establish those things before you take the students, so that you can tell them what the expectations are going to be and what their rotation is going to look like. Communication can really save you on this. Now let's talk about tips for success when you're taking Psych NP students in your practice. So again, clear expectation, clear communication before they start their rotation can be really helpful. Setting up a plan for how they're going to access the charts, how they're going to access televideo appointments, if they're going to come in person, what their hours are going to be, setting all of that before and communicating that with them will really help. You also are going to want to think about assigning them meaningful tasks that are going to be conducive to their learning. Bonus points if they help you, right? But I think it's can be success overall if you can think first how you're going to take on students and how your stepped approach is going to be. I keep in mind, are they in the beginning of their hours? Are they in their first semester of doing hours? Are they in their final semester? Are they about to graduate? And trying to think about where they're at and how you want to take on their rotation with you. How much observation are they going to need? How much note writing are they going to need? See where their skill set is at note writing. How much, you're going to have to figure this out, obviously, in the first couple weeks, but in those first couple weeks, you're going to think, okay, how much observation should they do with me? How much note writing? How much actual interviewing of patients? And so that can be really helpful to think about in those first couple weeks while they're with you. Long story short, it's just really important to think about the pros and cons of adding NP students into your private practice, and essentially when you feel that the pros outweigh the cons, to build out a build out basically your standard procedure for how you're going to onboard them and what tasks you're going to give them. And so those are the main takeaway points. Ultimately, it's up to you and your practice and your capacity. And so I encourage you to follow your gut and not and try to avoid people pleasing or taking on students before you're ready. I know there are so many students out there that really, really need preceptors, and I know I get tons of requests and I wish I could fulfill them all, but it is really important to provide students with a good learning experience by only working at what you have the capacity for. If you are in the process of thinking about starting a private practice or in the process of building your private practice and are interested in mentorship, please look at the link below. I have a full mentorship program on private practice building. There is a video on there about how to incorporate PsycNP students in your private practice. It's even more detailed than this video is. It talks a lot about just kind of the actual step-by-step process and kind of the more of the logistics of it. And so that is part of the program, as well as videos, community, and a live component. So I encourage you, if you're interested in mentorship for building your practice, look at the link below. Start by watching my masterclass and applying. I would love to meet you, and I would love to help you build that practice that you are dreaming of. All right, until next time.